Newsfirst, Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali.
And a very good evening to you. This is Newsline Live, although it is a recording, given the circumstances and also when I introduce my guest to you this evening. This is in essence a Christmas message. It's Christmas time. It's a season of goodwill and good cheer. And who better than to have with us today as His Eminence, Malcolm Cardinal Ranjith, the Archbishop of Colombo. Very good evening to you, Your Eminence, and welcome to Newsline.
Thank you, and very good evening to you.
Thank you. What is your message this Christmas, bearing in mind everything that's happened to Sri Lanka for the last 2 or 3 years?
The Bishops' Conference has studied this issue of the present situation and has agreed that we will go for a very sober and mild Christmas, because it is not a time when we can engage in revelry due to the situation in the country and very especially the situation facing millions of people in Sri Lanka. So that is why we thought that we will appeal to the general public to have a very sober Christmas.
When you mean sober, what's the meaning? Sober as in lay off the alcohol, that kind of sober, or sober in other ways?
No, it is not so much in any particular thing that is to be done,
right,
but more in the way you spend, and you wish to sort of get yourself into an artificial world of happiness created by the possession and enjoyment of pleasure and things around you. But to try to make it more sober, understand yourself in a better way, realize that you are only a temporary human being on this planet, and reach out, if possible, in help and assistance to others, and spend Christmas in the spirit of giving and sharing.
I know that our group are conducting a process of giving books, distributing books. Is that the kind of thing that you would endorse?
Very much. Not only books, but also many families are struggling to make their daily requirements, meet their daily requirements. So we would be very happy if as many people as possible can be helped by others, especially those who have the means to have at least a meal a day, a substantial meal, because yesterday I saw in the papers that the FAO has reported that 6.1 million Sri Lankans are unable to have a proper meal a day. So that is a very serious situation. So when we celebrate Christmas in that kind of situation, we have to be challenged by that, and we have to share what we have with them. Otherwise there's no Christmas.
And Your Eminence, I have no desire to make this a political discussion, but the circumstances are such. The FAO says about their figures about people struggling to have a proper meal in our country. And I was driving past the Golf Face area between the old Parliament, what is now the Presidential Secretariat, and the Treasury Secretariat, and there was some event being planned and being carried out there. The car I was in, the driver was furious. He said, "What is this nonsense that the people are trying to do? Are they trying to pretend that Sri Lanka is all hunky-dory and everything's fine?" And I contrast his anger, his frustration, with what you've just said about the FAO and so on. Do you think there is a deep misunderstanding of the people's distress?
No, this is of course, these are things that are organized by the government practically. because I heard that the President had gone and participated in that event. We of the Bishops' Conference and all of us agreed that we are not going to take part in any state Christmas festivals this year, given this situation. And so, because they failed to get us, because normally we have army carols with the participation of the bishops, then other forces organize carols with the participation of the bishops and so on. But then this time we thought that due to this serious situation of our people, we cannot attend state functions because the state itself is in question for us. Therefore, there was no ethical principle behind our participation in that would give a recognition to the existing structures of the state, which we are not convinced can be accepted.
Can you expand on that? Are you saying that the government of the day has no legitimacy?
Well, it is all because of a loophole in the Constitution, that a president who gave up his job and went away could be replaced by a president in parliament. The president is normally, the normal understanding of our people is that the president has to be elected by the people directly in an election. It has happened up to now. So therefore, what would have been correct would have been, if the president left the country, ask the people for their mandate, for their confidence. But this never happened. Instead, the people who came to power, they thrashed all opposition in a very hard way, and they have been arresting a lot of people. We cannot accept that as an acceptable way of democracy, forcing oneself on the people. Therefore, there is, for us practically, there is no legitimacy for this government. Maybe the parliament has a certain amount of legitimacy because they were elected by the people. But the president has to be elected by the people.
Although constitutionally and legally, the provisions for his election as the president in the absence of the fact that the previous president went away, that is constitutionally correct.
That's a temporary position. They should hold an election or announce an election, or even now what they are trying to do is to postpone the elections. There are these provincial, what you call Pradeshya Sabha elections that are due, but they are trying to postpone those. That means that they are afraid of the public. So that shows that they are imposing themselves on us, on the public. They should go for an election. If they are really democratic and if they listen to the people, then they must have the courage to face that test, if they are sure that they will win it. But they are refusing to do that, citing, of course, economic reasons. But if you take the amount of money that they are wasting on all kinds of other things, that 10 billion rupees that has been requested by the Elections Commission is nothing. So, what we say is, why not go for an election and establish your legitimacy? Because all these decisions to arrest people, to put them inside, to try to stop opposition, now they are trying to interfere with one of the media groups and trying to control them. This is all wrong. In a democratic, open society, people should be allowed to criticize the government. If that is not there, then it is not a democracy anymore, it is a dictatorship. That is why we cannot accept such a kind of situation.
And that is deeply worrying to you?
It is, because it doesn't seem to, we don't seem to have an end to this tunnel that we are inside. Because all kinds of things have been said about the IMF, about some countries restructuring their loans and others promising bits and bits here and there, you see, as if the whole thing has turned around, that all the tourists have come back. Some of these tourists who have come are not spending their money here. I heard that some of these tourists are running businesses on their own in these different coastal zones. So this is not going to bring in a huge amount of money to this country. What I am asking is, why can't the political leaders of all the parties, without thinking about who should be the boss in this area, in this scene, try to work together and think about the future of how do we want to develop our agriculture so that we can export our agriculture products. How can we develop our fisheries, because we have a fishery area in the sea which is bigger than our own country. How can we develop that? How can we face up to the other challenges of progress and development? Look at the state of the estates and the workers. They can hardly manage their daily budget. None of these things come into their consideration. All what they are doing is to get into the parliament and attack each other and create a situation of instability in the country.
And Your Eminence, in this period of Christmas and goodwill and good cheer, what can we do? What can the public, what can the church do? And I dare ask you, what should the government be doing in terms of these people who are the most vulnerable? We have, as you just mentioned, the plantation sector workers. We have the fishing community who are deeply challenged by the non-availability of the full complement of fuel requirement that they need to go out to sea and so on.
Now you see, with regard to the fishing community, the government has entered into a contract with the Indian company to establish a new jetty, and they are digging the sand of the Gampha district coast, and some millions of cubic meters of sand will be dug out, causing a further threat to the reef, because this area had been already carved out by the previous project, the famous Port City project. A big amount of sand has been taken out, and this is going to cause a lot of possibility of terrible sea erosion in that place. And there's a threat to the Pamunugama, Pitipana, Nigambo Peninsula getting washed away. Now these people, just to get some money at the moment, they will do anything. But there's no long-term plan. There's no consciousness of the ecological damage that can happen by allowing all these international companies and others to exploit our geographical areas and so on, And that's very unfair by the population. Just because they have a majority in parliament, they should not try to steamroll their way through these projects in order to make money and in order to sell off whatever we can sell.
Your Eminence, do you, the economic, everyone who comes on my program tends to say this, and that is that Sri Lanka is having a dollar crisis. We don't have enough dollars to do whatever. So you have that. You have severely depleted numbers of tourists who are coming to Sri Lanka. In October we had 52,000 or 42,000, and in November we had 52,000. But it's about 100,000 tourists down from before COVID. But we have the IMF who say we want a plan for how you're going to service your debt. The Chinese don't seem to have given us a time frame. And then we have the president of the country who says, almost tongue-in-cheek, I call it Gerald Ratner-like, but he said what he said, and he said, I have no forward plan. Now, isn't that all very confusing to the international lending community? At the end of the day, it is the people of Sri Lanka who are having a problem. How do you?
That is the very reason why I am telling that there is no plan. No plan. And that plan has to be devised in a national way, in a not partisan way, by one party wanting to hold on to power or enjoy power, but it must be done with a sense of patriotism for the country. And together, all the political leaders, religious leaders, all these people should think together, what are we going to turn this country into in the future? Are we satisfied about what is happening at the moment? Can we change that? Those are the things that the bigger questions have to be answered before going to the IMF, because we are divided. We are struggling for power, to keep on in power or to gain power. This is the whole question there. There is no love for the country, there is no planning, discussion together. How shall we develop this country together? All the political leaders, political parties, religious leaders together to plan for the future of this country. No such effort is being made. Instead, they are bickering in parliament, one against the other, and creating a hopeless situation for the future.
And a divided Sri Lanka, and how bleak is Christmas, or what's the future like? We are in conversation this evening with His Eminence Malcolm Cardinal Ranjith. We'll see you on the other side of the break.
Newsfirst Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali.
And welcome back to Newsline, a special Newsline tonight. And we are, of course, deeply grateful to our guest today, who is none other than His Eminence Malcolm Cardinal Ranjith. And welcome back again, Your Eminence, to the program. You've been alarmingly frank when you said, actually you reflected what the President said himself. The President said he has no forward plan. And you said that before I said it, and you said that there is no plan. But you also said that Sri Lanka is a divided country. And before we can go to the IMF, it's down to us to get our home in order. How possible is that when you have different factions and you have different political ideologies, different personalities? We have the ongoing problem, the so-called national problem, in which the minorities feel terribly left out, and some minorities feel that they have been targeted. How do we achieve this togetherness before we can present a united front to the IMF and to all our other lenders?
Now this is I see an identical situation to what existed before we gained independence, where we need to be united, first of all. Before we gained independence, we were united across the board. Christians, Hindus, Buddhists, Muslims, Sinhalese, Tamils, Muslims, all together, we struggled for freedom. But today what we need is a second struggle for freedom in order to create a new Sri Lanka, a new society, transparent, honest, disciplined, with a vision for the future. Unless such a thing is done, we are not going to survive. We have to learn a lesson from the 75 years of independence. It is not just to celebrate 75 years of independence. There is no point in trying to celebrate an independence which we don't have. Most of the people in Sri Lanka have lost their independence. Nearly 4,000 people have been arrested, and some of them are still in jail. What independence are you going to celebrate? So unless we put our heads together and create a new Sri Lanka, and that is what the youngsters in their struggle called for very firmly, not to put this one or that one in power. It was a struggle for freedom, a new freedom, where we think together as people of different religions, different races, together as one country. And we also think about the dignity of everybody in this country and try to safeguard that, create the structures necessary, go for a new beginning with the rule of law, discipline, a sense of vision, We have lost everything in these 75 years. And in the end, we don't know where we are heading. So this is a very, very bad situation. We need to put our heads together and think of creating a new Sri Lanka for tomorrow.
And do you firmly believe that an all political party solution would be the solution?
It could be a solution, but one should not try to get oneself established by doing that. Try to justify your authority. We must all sit together like equals and say, now let us make a new beginning, find a new start.
And is that why you say that elections is what will happen?
What is necessary? Because then let the public decide, and then let those newly elected people, or if there is going to be an election and if a new leadership can be created in this country, let them put their heads together and create a new Sri Lanka.
Your Eminence, a diplomat recently told me that there were 3 items that bothered his country at the moment about Sri Lanka, and they were in no particular order. He said that he noted that the so-called bond scam, the attacks carried out from people who came out of temple trees and carried out attacks on the innocent protesters at the Aragale site. And thirdly, that he saw no resolution as of yet on the Easter bombings. Do you think that these 3 questions brought out to me by a diplomat, do you think that these 3 questions are central to this unity that we seek?
Not only these 3 questions. These 3 questions are vital because they happened in the recent past. But about the options that we have made all along, we have to ask ourselves, for example, this dictatorial presidential system, we didn't want it. Mr. J.R. Jayawardena created this constitution in 1978. Maybe he created it with a good purpose, but then it went awry all along. And amendments, there have been 22 amendments up to now.
Indeed.
So, I don't know. So, what is wrong? So, therefore, this constitution is not going to work. We have to seek a new constitution which is more democratic, which is more open, which is more inclusive, which provides the voice, space for the voice of the people at all kinds of levels, whether they are racial groups or linguistic groups or equal status. You look at Singapore, there are 3 major communities there. The Chinese, the Malays and the Indian communities. These 3 communities somehow get along well together. You have to create a new coexistential model for our country. If that can be done, then all these problems can be solved. But these people, now the leaders are doing is only to haggle the whole time, and naturally you send the wrong message to the international community.
So you're not surprised that the international community hasn't exactly jumped off the starting block to help us?
Sure, because they say, what is the use of dumping money or help on a drain, that drains it off. We have not got over the question of corruption. Is there a proper structure to withhold corruption? What about the rule of law in the country? Now this Easter attack, we have been clamoring for at least the minimum of implementing the recommendations of the Presidential Commission. But the Attorney General's Department is not doing anything about it. They are sleeping over it because they have been manipulated by political leaders for their own self-interests.
Are you unhappy that the report hasn't been made public?
Yes, very much, because the report, the final document has been published, but the evidence, documents that contain the evidence is being hidden. I have written number of letters to the RTI, under the RTI Act, to the government on many occasions, even to the Parliament, but we have got a blank no answer. So we can't do this because this is not honest. This is downright dishonesty that they don't allow us to see the evidence.
Especially during Christmas as we are now, What do you say, Cardinal, to the people, the victims in and around the Katuapitiya church, which I've been to several times? What do you say to them? There's one family there, I know there are several, but there's one family who have 3 children. The daughter was studying in China. She came back to see her 2 parents in a coffin in the front room of the house. What do you say to them? What do you say to them today in this period of goodwill and good cheer, and when they have there is no process to have anybody accountable for this, so that they can have some form of closure?
That is what we have been telling repeatedly, that these people have been treated very badly by frequently by these governments that came to power either before the attack or even after the attack. Now you see, this attack has many authors, not only just the Saran Hashim's group, because when you read what is happening and even the investigation, the Presidential Commission report leaves room for further investigation, and it speaks about many grey areas in the investigation which they could not complete, but which are central to the discovery of truth, who really did this. Because the government is trying to say that it is some Muslim people who did it, and they have arrested all kinds of people who drank tea with Saran Hashim or were seen in a photograph with him and all that. But those are the people who did it. They can't prove it, because it's only a peripheral, marginal connection. But what about the real authors behind that? Has there been a serious investigation?
But this is the government, Sri Lanka.
Yeah.
Authorities are the same people who managed to defeat the so-called most dangerous terrorist group in the world.
Yeah, true enough. I mean, they said they defeated the most dangerous terrorist group in the world, but they have to ask also the question, why this group became terrorists, that group, you see. Because for years we have been treating the Tamil public in a very shabby way. We have to understand that. So there was no such request for a separation in this country. When we received independence, they were brothers and sisters with us together, and they went along with us all along. And then, of course, they would have had their legitimate rights to use their language, their culture and all that. And in fact, the 1956 Sinhala only bill was a disaster, a disastrous decision taken by this country. That is where we started going only in one lane, avoiding all the others. And there we went into, the country slid into anarchy and racism and all kinds of evils that destroyed this country and its unity and its spirit, right? It is an unnecessary war which we ourselves created, this war. The Europeans and the world community, they know about it. They are aware of it. So what they are saying is, reconcile yourself, find a solution, find a reconciliation. Now there have been so many commissions. Even this government has promised that they will find a resolution for this problem. How many promises have been made to them all along? None of those promises have been kept. During the time of the Mahinda Rajapaksa government, they had the LLRC. What happened to the proposals of the LLRC? Nothing. No? So can we trust these governments like that, oriented only for power, not to serve the people but to cling on to power? That is their criterion. How can you create a better Sri Lanka this way? Similarly, the Easter attack, even they are attributing it only to the Muslim community and trying to create racism out of this.
Do you believe that that's wrong?
Yes, that's completely wrong, because there are other authors, other possible authors that are mentioned there. What was the Directorate of Military Intelligence doing with Jamil, the 7th bomber? They knew about him. What were their connections? The investigations have to happen about that also. Nothing has happened. The commission report says investigate, but nothing has been done up to now. The Attorney General is sleeping over it.
Have you actually taken this matter up with the highest office, I suppose, the highest office meaning the President?
We have written letters and letters to these people and told them number of times, please investigate all these matters. Mr. Gotabaya Rajapaksa, he came to this particular building here and promised all the bishops that he will do a thorough investigation. What happened? The actual President, Ranil Wickramasinghe, he has said that he is going to Scotland Yard and here and there, everywhere. These are all dramas. There is no content in it, only empty words. So we know that we have told the international community, don't believe in these people who fool around. That's it. Ensure that justice is done to the Easter victims, because those victims are waiting for, they have lost their parents, their children, the precious lives of people that they can't, with money they can't give life back to those people. And you can't restore them to what? They had done no wrong, they went only to church, they went to the hotel to have Easter brunch. They got blasted to pieces. For what reason? Unless there's a thorough investigation and the truth is explained, the people will continue to suffer.
I've almost lost words, but the victims of the Easter attacks, there appears to be no rationale as to why, but then terrorism usually doesn't have any rationale. But what do you say to these people who turned out in their Sunday best, who some of them were actually in conversation with God? Others were preparing to do that, and just like that, they lost their lives. Some of these victims I've seen them, they have life-changing circumstances, children without parents, some people are destitute. And I know that the church helps various people with their ongoing survival. But ecclesiastically, Cardinal, what do you say to these people?
Actually, we have no words to tell them except to speak to them about having that attitude of faith, looking at Jesus Christ hanging on the cross, and draw consolation from that fact, and also to understand that their dead loved ones are in the presence of God, being recompensed for the good that they have done. And we are considering raising these people to sainthood in the church eventually, because we can do nothing. We can't give them back life. If I could give them back life, I will do that, but I can't do that. I don't have the authority. So what do? We console them, we stand with them, we speak for them, and if we can help them financially and in other ways, we do that. Our counseling services are continuing to follow them up.
Do you say to people, let's put all these behind us and let's move forward without any accountability? Is that what?
No. We never say that. They have a right to accountability. They want to know, they have a right to know who did this and why did they do it and so on. That is their right. But to make use of them to attack another community, you see, chosen by the political people, they chose to lay the burden only on this particular community, that they did it, but there is no proof of that whatsoever.
Your Eminence, you have been credited with bringing a semblance of stability to Sri Lanka in the immediate aftermath of the Easter attacks. And certainly we do acknowledge that without your presence, the situation would have been far worse. So you were that sort of calming force. But you also had a certain, shall we say, relationship or a friendship with President Mahinda Rajapaksa. Post these attacks and post his brother's presidency, Have you ever discussed it with the Rajapaksas?
Yes, I have. In fact, with Mr. Gotabaya Rajapaksa, we had a lot of discussions on this matter. And in fact, when he came here to meet the Bishops' Conference, we explained matters to him and said, this is our serious concern. At the moment, please do a thorough investigation. And he promised to do that. But the moment this Presidential Commission report reached his hands, he backed out. He called me the next day and said, how can I implement all these recommendations? He told me. I said, what is the problem? Because there were some recommendations suggesting the banning of some, not only the Muslim extremist organizations, but also the Sinhala extremist organizations, headed by some Buddhist monks. How can I arrest them? How can I take action against them and so on? I said, you are not the one who is going to do it. Let the course of law take its action. It has been suggested to the Attorney General. Let the Attorney General give him the full power to do whatever he has to do. So, but he didn't do it. So at a certain point, I was knocking my head on a stone. So I knew that there was nothing happening that way. They were just trying to palm it off to the Muslim community and say they were the ones who did it, therefore you hate them or something, whatever that is, right? But we didn't want to do that. That was not our task. Our task was to do justice to our people who lost their precious lives, who lost their loved ones, and a lot of problems that came with it. How to look after them, how to console them, these are serious issues. But these politicians, they were hardly bothered. They want to, as they did all along, they want to put this crime under the sand and tell us, forget about it. That's it. We can't accept that.
But you're not going to forget about it.
No, we are not going to forget about it. Myself, I will be Archbishop for some time. After that, another one will come, because the issue will go on.
But I hope that there will be resolution. Of course, you will carry on.
There should be a thorough investigation, a transparent investigation, where we are satisfied that the proper approach has been made to find out what really happened.
May I ask you, you don't need to answer this question if you don't want to, but can I ask you, Cardinal, Your Eminence, is the Pope aware of the intensity of the non-action in Sri Lanka about the Easter bomb attacks?
The Holy Father is very much aware of it, and he has given us the fullest support and cooperation in this matter. In fact, when I went to Geneva, he backed it very strongly, because he also has heard a lot from all kinds of sources that these people are trying to hide this, like many other murders that took place. Lasantha Vikramatunga, then this Eknaligoda and all these people. He has heard all these human rights violations down the history of our country. Many of them have disappeared completely. So that's a right of those people to know what happened. It is the right of the Easter Sunday victims also to know what happened to them, and we will defend that.
And it is the right of the people of the North to also know what happened to them.
To also know what happened to them, and also it is a right for the people of the North and of the East and the South to be treated as equal with equal dignity, citizens with equal dignity, all of us.
And finally, Your Eminence, please tell our viewership your Christmas message this 2020.
I would like to ask everyone not to offend the poor, because many people in this country are very poor right at the moment, suffering. They have nothing to eat. So in this situation, please think about them over Christmas and share your Christmas joy with them. That is the best way in which you can experience the true spirit of Christmas.
Your Eminence, thank you very much. We much appreciate your presence on Newsline. We've been waiting a long time.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
And I wish you a peaceful and a sober Christmas.
Same to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And that's the way it was, ladies and gentlemen, on Newsline Live. Take care and have a great, as you can, Christmas. But as always, God bless you all.